So imagine you buy this really gorgeous, ornate antique mirror.
Oh, okay. I already don't like where this is going.
Right. But you bring it home, you hang it right across from your bed, and at first, everything seems completely normal.
Naturally.
Yeah. But a few nights later, you start noticing something just out of the corner of your eye. Like your reflection seems to be moving just a fraction of a second slower than you are.
Ugh, that is genuinely my worst nightmare.
I know, but you try to rationalize it. You tell yourself, well, I'm just tired. My eyes are playing tricks on me.
Right, just denying it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, one night, you're standing in your bedroom and you just wave at the glass. And your reflection just stands there.
Oh,
It
no.
does not wave back.
Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying.
It really is. And welcome to today's deep dive. It is Tuesday, 2026, Zo 421, and we have a very specific kind of spooky mission today. We are unpacking the primal, universal terror of the mirror.
Which is such a fascinating topic.
It is. Like, why does a simple pane of silver-backed glass instinctively put us all on edge? And for you, our listener, I promise this isn't just a rundown of, cheap movie jump scares.
Oh, far from it. I mean, the stack of materials we are synthesizing today is actually massive.
Yeah, we've got quite the variety.
We really do. We're pulling from a collegiate thesis on literary doppelgangers, deep dives into the mechanics of horror cinema, historical articles on urban legends, and even a microfiction and YouTube shorts.
Which is where that intro came from, right?
Exactly, yeah. That scenario just described is actually from a Minute Mystery shirt we reviewed, and it strikes at the absolute core of a very ancient, very human psychological terror.
Because, before we can even begin to understand why directors use mirrors to scare us, we have to figure out why our brains are biologically hardwired to distrust them in the first place.
We really do.
So let's start with the literal psychology of staring into a mirror. I was reading through that Bustle article in our stack, and it brings up something called the Caputo effect.
Oh, the Caputo effect. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
frankly, knowing this exists makes me never want to look in a dark bathroom mirror again.
It is deeply unsettling once you realize what your brain is actually doing behind the scenes.
So what exactly is it?
Well, the Caputo effect is a documented neurological glitch. Basically, when you stare into a mirror in a dimly lit room, your visual system experiences a form of sensory deprivation.
Because there's not enough light.
Right. The lighting is low, you are staring at a fixed point, and so your brain essentially gets starved for stimulation. And, well, the human brain hates a vacuum.
So just what starts making things up?
It actively begins to invent things to fill in the gaps.
Wow.
Yeah, after just a minute or two, your peripheral vision starts to blur, and your brain pulls from its internal database to replace your actual face with terrifying, distorted imagery.
Wait, really? Like what kind of imagery?
People report seeing their face warp into monsters, deceased relatives, or even grotesque animal features. You are literally hallucinating a monster because your mind is trying to compensate for the low light. Oh my gosh, I don't think I could last 30 seconds trying that. I would panic.
Most people do panic.
And from what I understand, it's not strictly a visual glitch either, right? Like, there's an auditory component to this kind of sensory deprivation too.
Yeah, you're referring to pareidolia.
Right, pareidolia. That's a broader psychological phenomenon, isn't it?
Exactly. It's where your brain perceives a familiar pattern where none actually exist. So visually, it's the same mechanism that makes you see faces in the clouds.
Or like the man in the moon.
Yes. But auditorily, it's why people staring into a quiet, dark mirror might swear they hear whispering in like the white noise of a fan.
That is so creepy.
It is. So when you pair the visual distortions of the Caputo effect with the auditory illusions of pareidolia, you just have this potent biological recipe for terror.
Okay, so the brain is basically just gaslighting itself.
Pretty much, yeah.
But the sources point out that the fear of the mirror goes way deeper than just a neurological trick of the light. Like, ancient philosophers were tackling this unease long before we had modern psychology. They definitely were. I mean, if we look at Plato's Symposium, he explores this really profound idea of the divided self.
Right, the Greek myth.
Yes, Plato recounts this myth about the origins of mankind, claiming that early humans were essentially double what we are now, like one head with two faces, 4 arms, 4 legs.
Kind of like two people fused together.
Exactly. And according to the myth, they were so powerful that Zeus felt threatened and physically sliced them in two.
Leaving us inherently divided and, wandering the earth searching for our other half.
Which is a very romantic idea on the
It
surface.
is. But then when you apply it to a mirror, it becomes deeply unnerving.
It changes the context entirely, right? And that ancient philosophical concept eventually laid the groundwork for psychoanalytical theories centuries later, specifically from Sigmund Freud and his colleague Otto Rank.
Okay, yes, the outline mentions this. They tied the idea of the doppelganger-like, the double to our inherent subconscious fear of death,
Yes, they did.
which is a huge leap. I mean, how do we get from I am looking at my reflection to I am terrified of dying? The notes mention an edible fear of being replaced, but I'll admit, that connection totally lost me.
I get that. Let's break that down because it is complex. So think about the classic tragedy of Oedipus. At its core, it's about a son usurping and replacing the father.
Right, the new generation taking out the old.
Exactly. So Rank argued that encountering a perfect double of yourself triggers that exact same primal anxiety of replacement. When you see a perfect copy of yourself staring back, your subconscious panics.
Because there's two of you now.
Right. Nature dictates that you are a unique, singular entity. If a duplicate exists, it means you are no longer unique. And if you are not unique, well, you're expendable.
Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds almost like finding an unauthorized rogue backup of your computer's hard drive.
Oh, I like that.
And that backup is actively trying to overwrite your current operating system. So your brain panics because the reflexing represents an actual existential threat to your own primary existence.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. A rogue backup is exactly how the subconscious views the doppelganger. It basically asks the terrifying question, if they are me, then who am I?
Oh, wow.
And more importantly, when the universe comes to collect, which one of us is the original and which one is the copy that can just be deleted?
That is heavy. So if our brains are biologically hardwired to hallucinate monsters in the glass and our subconscious is screaming about existential replacement.
Yeah, we're basically doomed.
Right. It makes perfect sense that our ancestors who had no idea what the Caputo effect was invented cultural rules to protect themselves from this.
They had to rationalize it somehow.
Which brings us to the folklore. And I want to talk about the absolute most famous superstition in the world. Break a mirror, get 7 years of bad luck.
Oh, a classic.
But I have to ask you, why exactly 7 years? That feels like such a very specific, almost arbitrary sentence for just dropping a makeup compact.
It sounds totally arbitrary today, I agree. But the Bustle article traces that specific timeline directly back to the ancient Romans.
Really? The Romans?
Yeah. The Romans held a very intense belief that a mirror did not just reflect your physical appearance. They thought it captured a fragment of your actual soul.
Wait, your literal soul was in the glass.
Yes, your soul. And crucially, Roman medical and spiritual dogma dictated that the human physical body and soul underwent a complete cycle of renewal every 7 years.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right, so if you smashed a mirror, you weren't just breaking glass, you were physically damaging your own trapped soul.
Ouch.
Yeah, and you were then cursed with bad luck until your soul could naturally regenerate at the end of that 7-year cycle.
Okay, that makes infinitely more sense than just a random tally of bad luck.
It's very logical if you believe your soul is in the mirror.
And what's fascinating in the sources is how this anxiety at mirrors trapping the soul is almost completely cross-cultural. It's everywhere.
It truly spans the globe, particularly concerning death. I mean, in Jewish tradition, during Shiva, which is the week of mourning following a death, all the mirrors in the household are covered.
I've always wondered about that. Is it just so people don't worry about how they look?
Well, the common modern rationale is practical, yeah. Mourners shouldn't be distracted by their own vanity during a time of grief. But if you look at the older, more mystical roots, it was actually done so mourners wouldn't be startled by unseen demons.
Demons.
Yeah, demons who were thought to only be visible in reflective surfaces.
That is terrifying. And we saw the same kind of thing in American history, too. When Abraham Lincoln was assassinated and laid in state, all the mirrors in the White House were draped in black cloth.
They were, because that superstition became so deeply ingrained across so many different cultures. Like in old German and Dutch folklore, there was a strict warning
What was the warning?
that if you looked into a mirror shortly after someone in your house died, you would be the next one to perish.
Wow. Just immediately cursed.
Yes. And old Irish myths warned that the soul of the departed could actually get confused and trapped inside the mirror rather than moving on to the afterlife.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate slumber party ritual, something almost everyone listening has probably tried or at least heard of, which is Bloody Mary.
Oh, of course. Bloody Mary.
You go into a dark bathroom, you chant her name 3 times, and a ghost lunges out to scratch your face.
It's a rite of passage.
It is. But the origins of this are incredibly ironic compared to what it became.
The irony is staggering, honestly. Today, we associate the Bloody Mary ritual with pure horror, and we often incorrectly conflate her with Queen Mary I of England, who executed hundreds of Protestants.
Right, hence the bloody part.
Exactly. But folklorists have tracked the origins of the mirror ritual, and it did not start as a way to summon a murderous spirit at all. It actually started as a romantic divination ritual.
Wait, really? Like a Victorian parlor game?
Exactly like that. Young, unmarried women would walk backward up a staircase in the dark.
Sounds dangerous already.
Very. They'd be holding a candle and a hand mirror, chanting a rhyme in hopes of catching a fleeting glimpse of their future husband's face over their shoulder in the glass.
That is so weird. It was essentially analog, pre-internet dating.
Yes, a Victorian dating app.
But wait, I totally see how this connects now. Because they were staring into a dark mirror with nothing but a flickering candle.
The Caputo effect took over.
Yes, the sensory deprivation.
Precisely. They went in looking for a handsome suitor, but because of the sensory deprivation, their brains glitched and generated terrifying, distorted, monstrous faces instead.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
And so, over generations, the legend mutated from this romantic hope into a horror story about summoning a demon.
That is incredible, and it just shows how we adapt our fears. Because as society modernized, we didn't just abandon these superstitions, we internalized them.
That's a great point. We move them inward.
Right. The mirror's reflection kind of stepped out of the physical glass and became a literary metaphor. The doppelganger. Writers started using the double not as a literal ghost, but as a tool to explore repressed societal guilt.
And there was no society more oppressed than Victorian Britain.
That is very true.
The literature thesis in our stack does a phenomenal job analyzing this. In Victorian society, your public reputation and comportment were literally everything. You had to be flawless.
But humans are inherently flawed. We have dark, socially unacceptable urges.
Right. So authors created the literary double to act as a container for all that repressed evil.
Like Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Exactly, those two. In both of those classics, the protagonist uses a double. Whether it's a potion-induced split personality or a magically aging portrait.
They use it to siphon off their sins.
Exactly. The mirror absorbs the character's depravity, which allows them to walk around London maintaining a perfectly polite, respectable public reputation.
But the thesis points out a massive contrast in how Russian literature handled this concept, specifically looking at Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment.
Ah, yes.
And I need you to help me understand this, because Dostoevsky doesn't use a literal clone or a magic portrait, right?
No, he uses what literary scholars call a quasi-double. So the protagonist of Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, is this impoverished student who murders a pawnbroker.
Just a brutal crime.
Very brutal. And he tries to justify it with this complex, narcissistic, philosophical theory that extraordinary men are just above traditional morality. But internally, he is racked with agonizing guilt.
And then he meets a character named Svidrigailov.
Yes. Now, Svidrigailov doesn't look like Raskolnikov physically at all, but he is his internal psychological reflection. Svidrigailov is the living embodiment of Raskolnikov's terrible theory.
How so?
He is a man who commits horrific crimes but feels absolutely zero remorse. He is pure, apathetic emptiness.
So seeing this reflection doesn't make Raskolnikov feel better about his crime. It completely terrifies him.
It does.
He realizes that if he successfully kills his own conscience like he wants to, he will become this hollow, apathetic monster. So Svidrigailov acts as a harsh mirror that forces Raskolnikov to face his flaws, eventually driving him to confess and actually seek redemption.
It's a mirror used for moral correction. But if we contrast that with Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, the literary double is weaponized for the exact opposite reason.
Okay, how does Nabokov use it?
Well, in Lolita, the narrator, Humbert, is a monstrous predator trying to justify his abuse of a young girl. And he creates his own quasi-double in a rival character named Claire Quilty.
And Humbert constantly paints Quilty as the true villain of the story.
He does. Quilty is also a predator, but Humbert describes him as infinitely more debased, involved in grotesque theatrical crimes.
Oh.
Humbert uses his double to shirk his own guilt. He projects his own unforgivable sins onto Quilty, manipulating the reader by saying, "Look at this monster. I might be bad, but I'm not that bad. In fact, if I destroy him, I am the hero."
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. In literature, the double acts like a mirror. but the type of mirror changes based on the author's intent.
What do you mean?
Well, Dostoevsky gives his protagonist a harsh, magnifying mirror that forces him to see every ugly pore and, fix his life.
Okay, yes.
But Nabokov's narrator uses his double, like a carnival funhouse mirror. He intentionally distorts reality to hide his own guilt and trick the audience into thinking he's the better man.
That is a fantastic analogy. It perfectly captures how the doppelganger reveals the deepest mechanics of a character's psyche. Whether they use it to seek redemption or to avoid accountability, the mirror ultimately forces the truth to the surface.
So we've traced this from biological brain glitches to ancient Roman superstitions to dense Victorian and Russian literature.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. But today, visual media takes all of this and distills it into an incredibly visceral experience. The cinematic mirror monster.
Yes. The ultimate manifestation.
Now, I have to be honest and push back here just a bit, because we've all seen 100 movies where a character closes a medicine cabinet and a ghost is standing right over their shoulder.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that just a cheap, overused trick at this point?
Yeah.
Like it's pure jump scare math.
It's easy to dismiss it as a cheap jump scare because the trope is so ubiquitous now. But I'd argue, and Katie Marie Robinson Sherlock's essay in our sources backs this up, that it is far from a cheap trick when it's executed correctly.
How so?
It is an enduring staple because it expertly plays on our primal loss of control. The best filmmakers don't just rely on a loud noise, they use specific psychological mechanics.
What kind of mechanics? Give me an example.
Delayed timing, for one.
Right.
You expect the reflection to match your movement instantly. When a director delays the reflection by even half a second, it creates a deeply unsettling dissonance.
They subvert the laws of physics.
They do. They also use unusual camera angles where the audience can see the reflection doing something independent of the actor. Or they use incredibly subtle sound design.
Like what? Creaking?
Yeah, a faint creak or a whisper that seems to originate from inside the glass rather than the room itself.
That makes total sense. When you look in a mirror, you have an implicit trust that the reflection obeys reality. When it breaks those rules, your entire perception of reality just fractures.
Exactly. And early cinema directors understood this profoundly. During the silent film era, without dialogue to explain a character's internal thoughts, directors pioneered the use of mirrors to visually represent a fractured sanity.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, seeing a character's reality juxtaposed against a supernatural reflection right there in the exact same frame, it makes the audience fundamentally question what is real.
And the pop culture examples we pulled are just wild. There's this microfiction story on Scribd called The Thing in the Mirror.
Oh, that was so creepy.
A guy named Daniel inherits this ornate mirror, and his reflection starts acting independently, like it's smiling when he's terrified. Then the reflection whispers, "Trade places with me."
That Oedipal replacement fear again.
Exactly. And the story ends with the mirror empty, and Daniel's scream echoing from inside the glass. It plays right into what Rank was saying earlier.
It spans every genre imaginable, really. The TV tropes page in our stack highlights the aging devil in the anime Chainsaw Man.
I've heard of that one.
It is the literal manifestation of humanity's primal fear of aging, and it forms contracts with victims through mirrors. It preys directly on our vanity and our mortality.
Wow.
They also point to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where a villain named the Hanged Man exists strictly within reflective surfaces.
So you can't even fight him normally.
Right. He attacks people's reflections to inflict fatal wounds on their actual bodies in the real world.
Modern horror cinema is really where this trope reaches its absolute peak. Like, the collider list of horror movies with deadly mirrors is packed. You have movies like The Hole in the Ground, which plays on deep paternal anxieties.
Yes, that film has a brilliant sequence. A mother begins to suspect her son has been replaced by an imposter.
Like a changeling.
Exactly. And she finally realizes the horrific truth when she observes his reflection. The mirror acts as the ultimate arbiter of truth, revealing the monster that the naked eye just cannot perceive.
Or Look Away, where a severely bullied girl actually willingly swaps places with her sinister, assertive mirror image to exact revenge on her tormentors.
It's a great modern teenage adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde.
It totally is. But for me, the absolute standout is Oculus, directed by Mike Flanagan.
Oh, Flanagan's use of mirrors is masterful.
It really is. In Oculus, the antique mirror isn't just a portal for a ghost to jump out of. The mirror is the mastermind villain itself.
Yeah, it's a character.
And it doesn't rely on jump scares. It bends reality. It makes the characters eat a light bulb when they think they're eating an apple. It completely shatters your trust in your own perception.
And we cannot discuss mirror horror without mentioning the 2008 film Mirrors, starring Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh man, don't remind me.
It features an entity that uses mirrors not just to observe, but to aggressively enter the real world.
The jaw-ripping scene from that movie is permanently burned into my brain. I can't unsee it.
It is notoriously gruesome, I know, but mechanically it is the ultimate expression of this fear. A character's reflection is violently murdered in the glass, and that physical trauma translates directly to her actual body in the real world.
It's awful.
It is the complete and total violation of the safe physical boundary that the pane of glass is supposed to represent.
Which brings us right back to you, the listener. The next time you are standing in front of your bathroom sink brushing your teeth, or walking past a dark reflective store window at night, take a moment to realize what you're actually looking at.
It's not just silver and glass.
Exactly. You are looking into a rich, terrifying history.
You're staring into Plato's ancient myth of split souls. You're confronting Victorian repressed urges and Dostoevsky's moral guilt.
Yeah?
You are experiencing the Caputo effect, where your sensory-deprived brain is just waiting in the dark to play terrifying tricks on your mind.
We've covered ancient philosophy, psychological brain glitches, literary doubles, and cinematic monsters. But before we sign off, there was one final provocative thought from the source material that I want to leave you to mull over.
And it's a good one. When you consider that early cinema used mirrors strictly to represent a character's fractured sanity, and modern psychology proves that our own brains actively invent the terrifying faces we see in dark reflections.
It raises a haunting question.
It does. Is it possible that the mirror monsters we are so instinctively afraid of aren't supernatural at all?
Right.
What if the real horror is that the mirror is the only place we are finally forced to stand still and look at the unacknowledged darkest parts of our own minds?
So, the next time you wave at your reflection, you better hope it's the only thing waving back.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.